What is the data set it's trained on? Can you kind of loosely speak to the enormity of this data set?
The pre-training data set?
The pre-training data set, I apologize.
We spend a huge amount of effort pulling that together from many different sources. There are open source databases of information. We get stuff via partnerships. There's things on the internet. It's a lot of our work is building a great data set.
How much of it is the memes subreddit?
Not very much. Maybe it'd be more fun if it were more.
So some of it is Reddit, some of it is news sources, all like a huge number of newspapers. There's like the general web.
There's a lot of content in the world, more than I think most people think.
Yeah, there is like too much. Where like the task is not to find stuff, but to filter out stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a magic to that? Because there seems to be several components to solve. The design of you could say algorithms, so like the architecture of the neural networks, maybe the size of the neural network. There's the selection of the data. There's the human supervised aspect of it with RL with human feedback.
Yeah, I think one thing that is not that well understood about creation of this final product, like what it takes to make GPT-4, the version of it we actually ship out and that you get to use inside of ChatGPT, the number of pieces that have to all come together, and then we have to figure out either new ideas or just execute existing ideas really well at every stage of this pipeline. There's quite a lot that goes into it.
So there's a lot of problem solving. Like you've already said for GPT-4 in the blog post and in general, there's already kind of a maturity that's happening on some of these steps, like being able to predict before doing the full training of how the model will behave.
Isn't that so remarkable, by the way, that there's like a law of science that lets you predict for these inputs, here's what's going to come out the other end. Like here's the level of intelligence you can expect.
Is it close to a science, or is it still, because you said the word law and science, which are very ambitious terms.
Close to, I say.
Close to, right? Be accurate, yes.
I'll say it's way more scientific than I ever would have dared to imagine.
So you can really know the peculiar characteristics of the fully trained system from just a little bit of training.
Like any new branch of science, we're going to discover new things that don't fit the data and have to come up with better explanations. And, that is the ongoing process of discovery in science. But with what we know now, even what we had in that GPT-4 blog post, I think we should all just be in awe of how amazing it is that we can even predict to this current level.
Yeah. You can look at a 1-year-old baby and predict how it's going to do on the SATs. I don't know. Seemingly an equivalent one. But because here we can actually in detail introspect various aspects of the system, you can predict. That said, just to jump around, you said the language model that is GPT-4, it learns, in quotes, something. In terms of science and art and so on, is there within OpenAI, within folks like yourself and Ilyas Eskever and the engineers, a deeper and deeper understanding of what that something is? Or is it still a kind of beautiful, magical mystery?
Well, there's all these different evals that we could talk about. And
what's an eval?
Oh, like how we measure a model as we're training it, after we've trained it, and say how good is this at some set of tasks.
And also, just on a small tangent, thank you for sort of open sourcing the evaluation process.
Yeah, I think that'll be really helpful. But the one that really matters is, we pour all of this effort and money and time into this thing, and then what it comes out with, how useful is that to people? How much delight does that bring people? How much does that help them create a much better world, new science, new products, new services, whatever? And that's the one that matters. And understanding for a particular set of inputs, how much value and utility to provide to people, I think we are understanding that better. Do we understand everything about why the model does one thing and not one other thing? Certainly not always. But I would say we are pushing back the fog of war more and more. And we are, it took a lot of understanding to make GPT-4, for example.
But I'm not even sure we can ever fully understand. Like you said, you would understand by asking it questions, essentially, because it's compressing all of the web. like a huge swath of the web, into a small number of parameters, into one organized black box that is human wisdom. What is that?
Human knowledge, let's say.
Human knowledge. It's a good difference. Is there a difference between knowledge? So there's facts and there's wisdom. And I feel like GPT-4 can be also full of wisdom. What's the leap from facts to wisdom?
A funny thing about the way we're training these models is I suspect too much of the processing power, for lack of a better word, is going into using the model as a database instead of using the model as a reasoning engine.
Yeah.
The thing that's really amazing about this system is that it, for some definition of reasoning, and we could of course quibble about it, and there's plenty for which definitions this wouldn't be accurate, but for some definition, it can do some kind of reasoning. And, maybe the scholars and the experts and the armchair quarterbacks on Twitter would say, no, it can't, you're misusing the word, you're, whatever. But I think most people who have used the system would say, okay, it's doing something in this direction. And I think that's remarkable and the thing that's most exciting. And somehow out of ingesting human knowledge, it's coming up with this reasoning capability, however we want to talk about that. Now, in some senses, I think that will be additive to human wisdom. And in some other senses, you can use GPT-4 for all kinds of things and say that it appears that there's no wisdom in here whatsoever.
Yeah, at least in interactions with humans, it seems to possess wisdom, especially when there's a continuous interaction of multiple prompts. So I think what on the ChatGPT site, it says the dialogue format makes it possible for ChatGPT to answer follow-up questions, admit its mistakes, challenge incorrect premises, and reject inappropriate requests. But also, there's a feeling like it's struggling with ideas.
Yeah. It's always tempting to anthropomorphize this stuff too much,
Right,
but I
sure.
also feel that way.
Maybe I'll take a small tangent towards Jordan Peterson, who posted on Twitter this kind of political question. Everyone has a different question they want to ask ChatGPT first, right? Like the different directions you want to try the dark thing.
It somehow says a lot about people what they try
first
first.
thing. First thing. Oh no.
We don't
have to reveal what I asked
do
first. I of course ask mathematical questions. I've never asked anything dark.